Hello, Ms. Weinlander here, and today I'm going to go through the Algebra 1B Unit 2 Lesson 3 quiz. So in the video I'm going to go through all the problems on the original quiz. That way if you missed one or more of them, you get a refresher of how you could have solved it correctly the first time. At some point in this video I'm going to say the secret word. That's what you need to make sure that you remember or write down. So in the Google form you type that in, and that's kind of like your ticket for a retake. Alright, so the first question here. Write an algebraic expression for the following word phrase, the quotient of r and 12. So hopefully you remember what quotient means, and quotient means division. So this is talking about the division of r and 12. So r divided by 12, or you can write it r divided by 12. Those are kind of the two main ways to write that. Just as a reminder, quotient talks about division. Product, if you hear that word or see that written down, it's talking about multiplication. Sum, it's talking about addition. Difference is talking about subtraction. There are other words that you've gone over, but those are kind of the four main ones to describe the four algebraic expressions, operations here. For number 2, it says write a word phrase for the algebraic expression 3x minus 7. So remember 3x, when you have a number next to a variable, means multiply. So it's saying like 3 times x minus 7. So for multiply, we can use the word times. We can use the word product. For that subtraction, our main thing is difference. So when we write that all out, we're talking about the difference. We usually start there. So we say like the difference between, and then we say the first term, so in this case between 3x, but we don't just write it as 3x, so maybe the difference between 3 times x, or the difference between the product of 3 and x. So the difference between the first thing and the second thing, second term in this case, and 7. And you write that in order, so you go left to right, so the difference between the first thing and the second thing. And that's your word phrase for this algebraic expression. For 3, simplify the expression 4 squared plus 8 divided by 2. Remember, we're going to go back to PEMDAS. I always write the M and D on top of each other and the A and S on top of each other, because it's not always that multiply comes before division. It's both of those happen at the same time, whatever one occurs first left to right. So that's why I write them on top of each other, to remind myself of that. So let's see, I don't see any parentheses or grouping symbols. I do see some exponents. So 4 squared, that means 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16. So I'll write that out. I don't see any more exponents. Now I get to multiplication and division left to right. So it looks like 8 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. I don't see any more multiplication or division, so go to addition and subtraction. 16 plus 4 is 20. So that's our final answer there. For number 4, it says find the square root of 25. So you can type that in your calculator and get 5. You can also think about what is the square root asking? You know that 5 times 5 is 25. They're looking for a number multiplied by itself. So the square root of 25, you can kind of rewrite it as the square root of 5 times 5, which is 5. Same idea for number 5 here. It's a decimal, but it's the same idea. Finding the square root of 0.81. Again, if you type it in your calculator, you'll get right to the answer, or you can think about what equals 0.81, or what equals 81. What would be the square root of 81? That would be 9 times 9. So just because there's a decimal there, so we have 0.9 times 0.9. You know that equals 0.81, and that is your answer. Alright, so for number 6, before we really start here, I will say the secret word. Today it's fail. So think of it as the first attempt in learning, F-I-I-L. First attempt in learning, fail. So that's the secret word you're going to put in the Google form. I bring that up because I have struggled for years to remember the difference between all 3 or 4 of these terms here. And this is really what kind of tricks me sometimes. What I really have to think hard to remember is what is 0. So come up with some way to maybe help yourself remember. I've even created like a help document kind of for myself here. And so I've copied from the book. I have a nice little like diagram, whatever helps you. But the more you practice it and the more you use study tips like this and tools and note sheets and things, the easier it'll get for you. So as you can see here, we have rational numbers and irrational numbers. Irrational numbers usually have decimals that don't repeat if you were to type it in your calculator. The famous example is pi. Rational numbers have a pattern. They can be described as being divided by something. And then they get kind of smaller within there. So the most restricted category is your natural numbers. Those are your counting numbers. Those are what occurs in nature, where you're going to say like, oh, 1 deer ran by. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, on and on and on. Whole numbers are all those natural numbers and a 0. And then integers are all those natural numbers, 0, and negative natural numbers. So, negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on and on and on in both directions. So for this question here, is 0 an irrational number? Nope. You can write it as just 0. Oops. You can write it as just 0. You can write it as a fraction. So it's not an irrational number. Is it an integer? Remember with integers here that is all your natural numbers, whole numbers, and negative natural numbers. So it does include 0. So that would be one of our answers here. Whole numbers, what makes whole numbers special is that it includes 0. And natural numbers or counting numbers, whatever's on your hand, you don't have 0 fingers on your hand. So 0 is not a natural number. So that's why it's 2 points, because you had to check 2 boxes. You had to check integers and whole numbers. For number 7, it says the cost of a telephone call is 75 cents plus 25 cents times the number of minutes. Write an algebraic expression that models the cost of a telephone call that lasts t minutes. So we know our variable is t equals the minutes, or the number of minutes. Our expression is 0.75 plus 0.25 times, remember times is multiply, so multiplied by the number of minutes, and we know the number of minutes is equal to t, so multiplied by t. When you have a number multiplied by a variable, you don't have to have a multiply symbol in between. You could have parentheses or nothing. You could just write 0.25t. Now frequently you'll see, kind of it's like the grammar of math, so you'll see the highest degree of listed first to your number, so it's usually listed as 0.25t plus 0.75. The variables come before just the numbers. And so that's your expression. For number 10, we're going to simplify the expression. So it looks like we're going to use PEMDAS again. So this time I do see parentheses and grouping symbols, so I'm going to write everything else out and then solve inside there. So 8 minus 6 is 2, and it's 2 squared. You can still keep the parentheses, or you don't have to. For e, that's exponent, so I do see an exponent, 2 squared, or 2 times 2 in this case. So write everything else and then solve 2 times 2 is 4. Now we go to multiplication and division left to right. That's 4 times 4, so 4 times 4 is 16. Then we go to addition and subtraction. 5 plus 16 is 21, and we have simplified that expression there. The last question on the quiz asked you to use this formula for a trapezoid. A is equal to h times the quantity of b1 plus b2 divided by 2, where a is the area, b1 and b2 are the lengths of bases, and h is the height. So how many square feet of grass are there on a trapezoidal field with a height of 75 feet and bases of 125 feet and 81 feet? So let's start defining our variables here. So h in this case looks like height of 75 feet. B1, remember that's the length of our bases, and our bases are 125 feet and 81 feet. So B1 could be 125, B2 could be 81. Now that we've defined those, we can substitute those into our equation here. So area is equal to h times B1 plus B2 divided by 2. So instead of h, we're going to write 75. Instead of B1, we're going to write 125. Instead of B2, we're going to write 81. Now that we have all numbers, we can go through order of operations in order to solve. So we have to tackle all the stuff in the parentheses first, and then that means that we have to tackle the multiplication division first, which is this whole top thing divided by this 2. So I have to do 125 plus 81 first. So you can type that in your calculator. I can pull up my calculator here. So I have 81 plus 125. That is 206. So I have 206 divided by 2. Again, practice in your head, but then double check with your calculator. So 206 divided by 2 is 103. So we have 75 times 103. Remember the parentheses there means multiply. So 75 times 103 is 7,725. And because this is talking about a real problem, a situation that could exist, there's units, we have to include units. So it's not just 7,725, it's 7,725 feet squared. And that is our final answer. So now that we went through all the questions on the quiz, continue filling out the Google form below. Type out the secret word. When you take your quiz retake, you only have to answer the questions that you missed the first time. So if you only missed question 9, because that was a pretty tough one, then you only have to answer question 9 on your quiz retake. If you missed questions 2, 4, and 9, you only have to answer questions 2, 4, and 9. Whatever you've already shown you understand, we're not going to make you re-show that you still understand it. That's why we call it a mastery learning school here at Michigan Connections Academy. So make sure you type in the secret word, continue answering the questions, submit it, and then as long as the secret word is right and you have no questions, me or Mrs. Hool will send you a quiz retake in webmail. Answer it, show in your work, send it back, and then you can have the opportunity to earn points back on your quiz. All right. Bye, everyone.